And good morning. I am Tamara Scott. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm in a remote location, as you can tell. I'm actually at a conference in Las Vegas. And so I appreciate Ryan Northfield, the producer, working with me to make all of these electric contraptions, these electronic connections work. And today joining me will be Tanya, Ditty. Tanya is with Control Women for America. She's the state director out of Georgia, and she's been studying Common Core for quite some time. Also, we're hoping that Drew Klein will be stopping in studio. We could talk to him briefly about Americans for Prosperity, the activities they have going here in Iowa, in the state. So joining me on phone is Tanya, and so go ahead and go with Tanya, but I want to talk about a couple other things as well. Of course, the government's now back to work. I don't know what that means for some of us. I don't know if the benefit is really there for some of us. We all see some concerns, having been in Washington, D.C. We have the issue of the health care, very, very expensive website, and very few users for a product that has a very uncertain future, and for most people, an even more uncertain price. And so we'll hope to do a future show on that. But right now, there's just no promise for the people who have now many been told they can't have their health care plans. Even in Iowa, we're getting stories of folks who were responsible, paying for their own, with their health insurance plans, and now those are no longer available. This is not just a few. I think it's going to happen to more and more. And news reports are showing that the White House was aware of this as a concern before they ever brought this program out. Also, in your neck of the woods, no matter where you're at, you probably have the Halloween holiday coming up. And I just want to say to you, be responsible and be careful. We've had guests on this show talk about the dangers of celebrating Halloween and that the holiday is so much more satanic than it used to be. And I think you see that with decorations in front of the house, the graphics, the violence, people putting dummies with blood in their front yard, things from their trees. Actually, it seems as if they've been murdered in front of the garage. Neighbors are calling the police because it's so graphic. Is this really what we want to celebrate? When we get into the numbers, the dollars that people put into Halloween, and then the costumes. And what I'm finding really concerning is it's not just kids anymore, it's adults. The holiday seems to be as much as for adults as it does children, as if we need this escape. And perhaps if we lived our lives better, making better decisions daily, we wouldn't also like we need this escape that people seem to be running for. But of those costumes, they seem to be getting more and more risque. When I see costumes for kids that make cheerleaders age 5 look like they have curves, we expect that the NFL cheerleader, a little bit of a concern for me. And so I'll just ask you to caution what you're teaching your children, what you're allowing them to hear, to know about this holiday. And it can be a family holiday. We used to take our kids to the relative's house, and actually we had prayers and blessings when we went. It was a good day, and I still believe that even in the midst of a horrible holiday that has a very satanic beginning, for us it was a blessing. So now joining me is Tanya, Ditty, and Tanya. Can you hear
Good morning,
me?
Tamara.
Bless your heart. Thank you for joining me all the way from Atlanta, Georgia.
I am glad to be here.
Now, you've been studying this Common Core topic for quite some time, and lately you've come into even a new area of it. And this is the problem with Common Core, is that it's not just one facet. When I speak to groups about it, it's hard, Tanya, as you know, to fit it into 20 minutes to 30 minutes, or to come up with a 3-point program. You know, I've kind of narrowed it down to the coercion, the way it was implemented, the cost that's yet to come with the implementation that's even passing further through the states as they continue to program with the technology, the unconstitutionality of it, the content, the compromised standards, and what many people consider communism in the classroom. But you've come into the collection of data. I've got them all with C's. I've been able to do that for people, but you've got them all you've come into the collection data portion of it, and you've run into the data palooza. What is the data palooza?
Yes, thanks for letting me share about this today, Tamara. And I know that you had Joy Pullman on the show from the Heartland Institute several weeks ago, and she is a walking expert on data. And I will try to stay away from the things that she talked about. But back in October of 2012, so about a year ago, the White House, in partnership with the Department of Education, Arne Duncan, sponsored what they called a data palooza. And it was an opportunity for the U.S. Chief Technology Officer Todd Park and Arne Duncan to host an event where they talked about data. And what makes this a little different and helps me understand it a bit more, because it's kind of where my background is, they invited people from the U.S. Department of Education, but they also brought in companies, vendors that might have a product that helps students in the classroom. They could be maybe tutorial-based in writing and math or reading and math, or they're coming up with new products that help students be able to track their data and on using these online tutorials. So not only did they bring maybe companies in, but they brought in representatives from a couple state Department of Education agencies, Utah and Georgia in particular, to talk about what they were doing in the state with the idea of data collection. And I will say that if you go to YouTube, actually, if you go to Google and Google Education Data Palooza, you'll be taking out to a site that lists 24 YouTube videos. You can sit and watch them and watch the presentations, and that's what I did. And I had a couple takeaways that, to me, were disturbing. The biggest takeaway is the biggest push that the feds are doing on data collection, at least in the education realm, is every student has a right to have access to their own data. And that the U.S. Department of Education, in partnership with companies, want to make it easy for kids to be able to get their data. So several times, those that were agents of the U.S. Department of Education that I watched their videos, they just kept stressing it is a child's right to have data. So much like they push in Washington these days, it's our right to have, health care. It's our right to this. I saw in a newspaper article, or maybe it was online the other day, that Nancy Pelosi is pushing the right for universal child care, that everybody has their child care paid for. So it's a right. It's a right. And so that's how they're framing this, that every student has a right to see their data. Every parent has a right to see their data. So what they're doing to do that is they're coming up with several initiatives. And again, the other two takeaways then, I had three out of this. The second takeaway is they're coming up with what they call a data button, My Data Button initiative, that allows students to be able to download readable data from vendors. And then they also are putting in place what they call the Learning Registry, which is a place the federal government is offering a site where educators can go and pull curriculum resources that are put out by the federal government, like NASA, Library of Congress. But what's disturbing is anybody can contribute to the Federal Learning Registry. And right now, they have a disclaimer on the site that says anything that's on this site, they don't control it. They're not pushing curriculum. But I wonder how long it's going to be when all the states tie into this curriculum resource that's being offered for, quote, free by the federal government, that then the federal government will now be pushing out, curriculum ideas, which goes against 3 federal statutes. So that's kind of what Datapalooza is all about. It's very fascinating to watch these vendors gush all over the U.S. Department of Education and wanting to be a part of these initiatives. One reason is there's money flowing. They're getting money to do this, but they bought on to this idea of tracking student data in the realm of maybe online tutorials or data helps or all of this. But anyway, that's a bit about the Datapalooza.
Okay. Now, Tanya, I want to come back to a little bit on the Datapalooza, but I ran into something myself last night. And let me see if I can find it on my computer here. In Oregon, they are dealing with this P20W. And I don't know if you've heard about this, and I've seen it in some of the Common Core writings. And the whole concern with Common Core is that there's so many unknowns, a lot like Obamacare, which is why some people are now calling the Common Core Obama Core. I don't want to do that to create animosity or hostility that doesn't need to be there between political groups, but there's so many unknowns with this. This P20W is now, according to this article in Oregon, dealing with, and you can go to watchdogwire.com, it's the Common Core 2.0. Oregon's P20W project goes prenatal. That P is for prenatal. So during and actually we've seen the videos of Lamar Alexander back years ago talking about needing to be in the prenatal and the nursery areas of the hospital as an education secretary. So we've got grade 20, P20W. Grade 20, according to Saxton, this is the graduate school. However, the last year of the doctorate program would be considered grade 19. So 20 more aptly is the W, the workforce. So when you're talking about data collection, Tanya, first off, we all assume it's going to be kindergarten through 12th grade. And I'm curious, have you heard, is it going to really be more than that? Is it going to be this prenatal through 20th or the year of graduate school and into the workforce?
I saw that article, and they actually have a video that you can watch of an Oregon, I don't know if it's an Oregon lawmaker. Actually, it's not. I think it's someone associated with their Department of Education, but it's someone out in Oregon. And they talk about being able, looking into the womb and being able to maybe identify what a child, I don't know that much about it. I just know that they want to go into the womb, that's the P, the prenatal, and taking it all the way through the workforce. Now, we know that Mark Tucker is, on record of wanting to be able to track from pre-K all the way through the workforce because they really just want to be able to develop a workforce of people that are, fully dependent upon the government. I don't know much about it, but what I do know is, the Obama administration is really beginning to push the pre-K, dollars. They've been in the state of Georgia pushing bringing in dollars for pre-K. And we know that there are actually Common Core standards for pre-K. So they do keep getting younger and younger and younger. And, the idea that Nancy Pelosi wants to push, universal coverage for, health, for child care, starting at, birth on up, they definitely want to get to the younger kids earlier and earlier to be able to, promote their ideology through education. So, and the way that they do that, again, is, to collect data. Anytime you get a government grant these days, they want some data from you. But, that ties into the bigger, the bigger scheme of things on that. What I guess, kind of like you introduced the show today, while the Common Core initiative is an octopus with many arms, the data piece is an octopus with many arms.
Right.
They're going to collect data any way they can, and they are going to get it any way they can. The big push now is there's been such pushback in the states from these Race to the Top grants, which if you took a Race to the Top grant, you had to build this state level student database system. Well, there's been such pushback in the state that the feds now are going into the individual school districts. They're going around, the state's Department of Education, and they're going directly to the school system. And I was told the other day by a school system that their board, the school system's Board of Education, voted down taking an individual Race to the Top grant just for their school district, because one of the stipulations was that they had to do a major sex ed survey, and that data had to go back to the U.S. Department of Education, where the grant was coming from. So again, just an example that they are becoming very aggressive on wanting to get data, and they've spent millions upon millions of dollars investing in these student databases, that they're not going to just sit back and not get data. They've invested way too much money in it. And, not to divert over to the healthcare issue, but, listening to some of the hearings today with Secretary Sebelius, some people ask, well, why don't we just delay, this and get this database and system so it's secure? They don't want to. It's the one non-negotiable. We're not delaying it because they want to be able to get people on health care, because they want to be able to collect data for people that way as well. So, the feds want personal data, and they're going to go about it any way that they can and try to sell it, like, a piece of chocolate candy. It's really good, so.
Well, okay, and so Tanya Ditty is my guest today. She's the State Director of Concerned Women for America, and as she mentioned, and I should have mentioned, her background is education. Her background is actually technology, and so she can give us some good insights into this discussion. Now, I think we need to take a break, Brian, so you can kind of bring me along on this. And to all of you who are following along, and I do thank you for doing that and giving us your time on webcast1live.com, webcast1live.com. We may be patching things together technologically, but the information is still sound and good information that you need, and Tanya can help us again. We're going to come back and talk more about this Datapalooza. We're going to talk about Common Core being the cement that brings it all together. So stay tuned with us. Ryan, you want to take us to commercial? We'll be back shortly.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device, your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hi, I'm Doc. You listen to me every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Doc and Lefty radio podcast program, where we discuss all the relevant topics of the day, including state, local, and national politics. My partner in crime, Lefty, often likes to have a little bit of conservative justice served upon him, so please turn in for the fireworks every week from 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays at webcast1live.com. Thank you.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
And Diane, Tamara, Scott, thank you so much for staying with us at this portion of Truth for Our Time and Tamara, Scott Live. Whatever name you wish to put on the show, I just haven't put ownership on that yet. My concern is more getting information to you, and I thank guests that we've had, whether it's Henry Burt, whether it's Tanya, Ditty, Joy Pullman, people who have understood and studied this Common Core phenomenon for quite some time. Okay, so Tanya is my guest. She's from Georgia. She's with the Concerned Women for America group. And if you don't know, Concerned Women for America is a women's public policy organization, the largest one in the nation. And education is one of their tenets that they've been dealing with in the 30 plus years that they have been in existence. Tanya, when I look at this data palooza, and you were speaking earlier this week, Common Core is really the cement that brings so many other things together. The reforms that we've tried in the past on education that have failed, Common Core really brings many of those into being on a permanent basis and takes away local control. And we're talking about the data collection portion of it. And one of the fallacies, if I can, you and I were talking, when I speak about this, I don't know how well you're received, but if there are those people who want to believe in their public schools, who are teachers from education, or who may be from a different political bent, they just want to believe that government is best, knows best for us, and can make all decisions better than we can. They become almost hostile and don't even listen to the material. But in this, Tanya, one of the promises they make, the whole reason we needed Common Core, was for those students who travel, who move from school district to school district. This will keep them in the loop and be able to put their learning smoothly from one school district to another. First off, the number of students that affects or impacts is less than 2%. And as you and I were discussing, if the curriculum isn't written, if teachers are writing their own lessons to align with Common Core, that won't work. It won't matter because you won't have a guarantee that the same topics are using or being used in the classroom at that point in the year, period. But one of the other things on this Common Core is that the information that will be stored, Tanya, on the Data Palooza, did it give you any idea if other companies, vendors, when you're talking about vendors, are you talking about suppliers or people who will be able to reap benefits from getting this information?
Actually, it's the vendors that are going to be able to reap benefits. An example could be Scholastic. Actually, I'll use eScholar or Scholastic or Gallup. These are people that have supplied these. And by the way, I'll make it kind of these are digital learning. It's digital learning resources. It's not textbooks. It's these people that are making the advances into digital learning. But when you go into a public school setting, that one of the big purchases these days are what type of digital resources can the school district buy to help students, maybe to learn to read better, or can be a resource if students are struggling. And I know in my the job that I just left, if students are reading below grade level, well, there'll be a company that would come out and say, look, we're going to provide this online digital resource that you can use at school and at home. A lot of it is at home. And if you go out, and we'll give you reading passages, answer the question, and then you can kind of self-test yourself. And again, it's just, digital learning tutorials. The problem is it's a data collection piece, and the more these companies can collect data on students, then they can turn around, better products. The key is they're going to have access to student data, and so these companies are going to make money on this, and that's the bottom line. They're going to make a tremendous amount of money. It's to their benefit to be able to collect data so they can turn around better products, and more than likely there'll be subsidies from the federal government. And it's just it's a racket. For one, it's a $1 billion or more racket. Pearson, by the way, who is the one that pretty much has a monopoly on textbooks and digital learning, they're going to be the biggest provider of digital learning materials. So it's a money maker, and then it's also dangerous because of the collection of data that kids will, quote, voluntarily do, not knowing the bigger picture that, and what I mentioned to you the other day is one of the videos talks about the My Data Initiative by Marina Martin, who is head of the department's education data initiative. She talks about how the federal government wants to be able to create a template to house all of these isolated pieces of data from vendors. If my child might be using 5 different vendors to do tutorials or use digital learning, well, that's fragmented data. Wouldn't it be great to have all this data in one place? And so the U.S. Department of Education has taken upon themselves to create this template, this online template that will house all the data. So when the student prints out their data that they can read, well, instead of having 5 pieces of paper with 5 different vendors, it'll all be aggregated together. And again, who's behind being that will have access to all this will once again be the federal government. So I know it sounds a little awkward, but if you go out and kind of watch those videos, which are about 6 or 7 minutes each, they were very limited on the amount of time they were allowed to speak. But if you watch it from beginning to end, the story is built for you on all the massive amount of data they want to collect, how proud they are on collecting data, and then, the eventual end person that will have this data will be the feds.
Will be the feds. Plus, we don't know who else. I mean, when our kids go get that job or go to apply, we don't know exactly who else will have personal data that we don't mind an educator or a school administrator possibly knowing, but I talk about a clean slate, Tanya. These kids will never get a clean slate. No,
they will not. Their history will always follow them. And again, the type of data that these vendors are wanting to collect seems very innocent. But when it's aggregated together. And they're not just collecting whether a student got it right or wrong. They might have emotional questions in there. They might have demographic questions. Yeah, all very, very innocent, just to collect a little bit of quote about you. Kids can often go in and build their own little profile and tell a bit about themselves. They make it very kid-friendly, and the kids can build their own little. They have out there where they want the kids to be able to build their own personal badges, much like a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout would collect certain badges that kind of tell you what they've achieved. Well, kids can, create a badge, a little portfolio about themselves, and it's all electronic data. The problem is it's going to get into the hands of the wrong people because it's being sold as you have a right to your data. It's very kid-friendly, very parent-friendly, and like you stated earlier, in the past, people have trusted vendors. They have been, quote, friends because they just want to help. I have no problem with people in the private sector involved with education if they're making money. I don't have a problem. Those partnerships are great because they provide a great service. The problem is it's going way beyond what it used to be. Now they're, in partnership with the federal government. Again, they would fall all over themselves during these videos to talk about, we're excited to be partnering with the federal government. Instead of the federal government saying we're excited to be partnering with somebody here, it's just the opposite. They're falling all over themselves as if the federal government is God, but the federal government has money, and that's what it's all about.
And you touched on that earlier, and I had read on that. One of the problems with Common Core is the legislators never voted to bring it in. It was forced on states by the money application when they applied for the Race to the Top monies. There was a method of understanding or agreement that they would do the Common Core standards before they were written. And the legislators never said, yes, we will accept this. In Iowa's case, I think the State Board of Education is credited for accepting the standards. And so part of the concern is now, as you said earlier, the federal governments have figured out they go right past, even in states like Texas, where they voted no, not to accept the Common Core. They're going to individual districts and offering money. And districts are so in need of money that they'll take that money. They'll take that grant. We hear grants are just always wonderful. And that will then force them to participate in various aspects of the program, whether it's the data collection, the state longitudinal data study. There are several names to it. The P20 workforce in Oregon. That's another one of the concerns, Tanya, is it's hard to warn people about something that's constantly changing and you can't identify well. Now,
correct, and I do want to be real clear that with the Race to the Top grants and stimulus bill back in 2009, the state built a state longitudinal data system. It's called a statewide longitudinal data system. And I can't say that the P20W fits into that. I think they're building the framework in which to hold the data. When the state got on, they thought that they were building a framework in which just to store data so that if a child moves within the state, their data is, moves with them. One thing that I learned from the Data Palooza, and I actually learned it watching our chief information officer from the state of Georgia. He was there. I was a little disturbed about that. But he is saying, well, what we're going to do now is we're going to hook the state database, state longitudinal data systems together in regions. So ours is called SEED, S-E-E-D, and it has to do with Georgia's state longitudinal data system is going to probably be connected perhaps like with South Carolina, North Carolina, surrounding states. So if kids travel, if someone moves from Georgia to South Carolina, then the data records, travel with them. But what's disturbing is when this thing was sold and was told to us that are opponents of the Common Core, oh no, this is data that's going to stay within the state. But, now all of a sudden they're going to be connecting these state data systems regionally, which is never what we were told. We were always told it was just within the state. So, see, they had plans to begin with. Most of these data systems were like an 8 or 9 phase type of system, and the last phase for Georgia is to connect regionally with other states around our area. And, this, again, what's it going to, after the regions are connected, how long is it going to be until they're all connected, which has always been the end game for them. It has always been to have a national tracking system for kids because the feds want the data to feed into the different agencies because Common Core is a workforce development program, and they need the data to be able to develop these workforce programs, and Common Core is that glue that ties it all together, which is stated out by eScholar on one of the Data Palooza presentations.
Okay, and when you talk, there's like 3 or 4 points I want to come back to. There's just so much information here. When you're talking about regions in your schools, all the more concern that we're going to lose local control. For those who don't believe we're going to lose it just simply with the Common Core, how much more pressure is there going to be that we have to make this change because the 3 other states that we align with are doing this, and so therefore we're going to be left out as a school district if we don't move along with this as well. So I hope people understand the pressure that's going to be on school districts, and I think this is one more area in which you're going to lose your local control. I want to come back to, you said that the students can enter the information themselves. It's going to be user-friendly. I've heard that same thing. Is that not a concern for you, Tanya? Because I look at Miley Cyrus. Here's a young lady, in her 20s, and still making decisions that I think she will likely regret later on. We know of teenagers on Facebook, the things they post, the information that they probably will wish at some point they would not have put out for the public to see. And yet these are the kids who are going to be putting information into their record that will be permanent, that will not go away, that will be allowed to be accessible from vendors, and we don't know exactly what vendors yet.
Well, I just want to kind of clarify, and if you'll forgive me, I have to travel across town, so I'm kind of switching gears and locations, and I'm on my cell phone. So I think we need to really kind of be careful. Right now, when kids go out and do these tutorials, they're just putting in their name and, a little bit of information to identify them. But some of them do allow to build, they call them avatars, information. It's just, kids get too loosey-goosey with that type of information. I can't say a lot of it is like a Facebook mentality, but, one of the vendors that my school district used, we could put demographic data in about the kids. We could put in what their gender is and, their grade level and some identifying information, perhaps, what their race is. And so some of that data is sitting behind the scenes that the kids never put in, but the school district put in because it helps the teachers make decisions. Those are the types of things that, could eventually get passed on to, on the student's profile, when the vendors are collecting this data. So, I think right now it's very surfacey, but, as these vendors want more and more detail about the kids, then, we move into a different arena. So, but yeah, kids are too loose online. That's for sure.
So let's come back to this Datapalooza, the 24 videos, 7 minutes apiece, and people can go to YouTube, and if they will search Datapalooza, they'll be able to find these videos.
That's correct. Actually, if you just Google YouTube Datapalooza videos, they'll come up. They start with Arnie Duncan, and then they end with, and I wanted to make sure that I got this in today for those that are listening. Michelle Malkin put out a piece last week on the technology czars and the Obama administration. And one of the people mentioned in there is Todd Park, who is, he's the former, I don't know if he's the U.S., I think he's the U.S. Chief Information Officer, but what I do know is he had a big role over in HHS when they were developing the healthcare.gov. He is, Obama considers him just a master of technology, and he was partnering with Arnie Duncan on this Datapalooza event. And the very last video is of him talking. He's wrapping up the day, but he's talking about how they have all these oodles and oodles of data and how they need to harness this data. So here you've got a technology czar that was working on the HHS plan, and we all know that it is to collect personal data on people. That is the biggest threat that we have with that. And he's over there wanting to harness data over in the education world. So you've got these people, they're tied together at the White House level, and they're dangerous people because they love data and they want to use data, to formulate their policies. And again, it's at the submission of us that we have to do that. And so we know with, Obamacare, it is something that they have to do. And so, the mentality of wanting that data is running around in Todd Park. And he seems like a very friendly guy and, just a guy that really cares about kids and wants them to have their data and think they have a right to have their data. But if you watch where he's been and what he's worked on, and now he's over there partnering up with Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, it's a scary proposition.
Well, first off, if he was that instrumental in the Affordable Health Care Act, the healthcare.gov, when you talk about technology, it's had its issues. Even Saturday Night Live, when Saturday Night Live starts talking about how poorly something's going with this administration, we know it's reached an all-time high. So if Todd Parks is the czar for technology, that's a bit of a concern, which leads me again, Tanya, what about the hacking, the accessibility? Who all will have this information? When these students go out to get a loan, it's amazing the kind of information people can pull up on you anyway, but in what instances is this information going to be utilized not only by companies they may be doing business with, but by folks who we don't even know are going to have access to our information?
And a couple of the vendors that did presentations on the Datapalooza, one of the products that they want to sell is the ability for kids to be able to make wise decisions when they go into college, and that is to be able to enter data and then to be able to look at the different colleges that they can afford. And so it's on the surface, it sounds great. We're helping the kids make some good, sound decisions going into college. I don't oppose that. I think that's great. One of a big financial advisor guru actually advertises, I don't know what product it is, but hey, parents, you can go out, plug in information, and it really helps the kids, help you make good college selections. Who doesn't want that in the era of kids getting stuck with these large student loans? The problem is how can these programs help you make good decisions, but that you've got to offer up your financial data? And again, anybody that was on that Datapalooza, no doubt are going to want to partner with the feds, because that is the great thing to do, because we've got to harness data. And so the kids are going to be plugging in all of this financial data on their parents, and again, painting the picture of who these kids are, and again, having access, to data. You see, it used to be, well, all we're doing is really collecting the students' grades. Well, this gets bigger and bigger and bigger. All of a sudden, well, based upon their grade data, well, now we want them to put together their financial data so we can help them make good college decisions. They just are going. The way they're collecting data is so fragmented, it's to keep us off guard. And because we would be livid if we thought they were just going to collect it all in one place. But they're using different vehicles to collect this data, and they're painting it as if it's a great feature and a great help. The problem is the people on the other side of this is the federal government, and they have no right to have this data. Well, actually, I'm going to take that back. They're in charge of student loans now, so they're going to be able to use this data, because of student loans.
And again, I say that's part of the concern is through this Common Core and things that are happening that are being tied to Common Core brings us the concern. And we've seen that when the student loans were taken under the federal government. And I hope folks understand what that means, that you no longer had competitive interest rates. You no longer had private institutions who could handle those loans. They all have to now go through the government. So they know everything. They know all the debt. They know your options for your student were limited when the government took that over, and we know how well they didn't do with Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac, and now we have them in Sallie Mae, and that's the only way you can get a student loan, I think, through the government. So to me, that's a concern. And Tanya, if you know differently on that, correct me on that. But having seen the students of late, and I know in college. Now, Tanya, we need to take another break here. When we come back, I would like you to kind of recap us, because in Bloom we haven't even talked about. And that's one more facet of this. And like you said, it is a several-headed monster, tentacles going several different directions. And so it's so confusing for people who don't want to invest as much time as you and I and others have done. And thank you for all the research you've done. Joy Pullman also. And I know you work with Jane Robbins on this, understanding the Common Core and presenting the facts to folks. We need to take a break. We're going to be right back. This is Webcast One Live. If you're listening or watching through this website, I thank you for bearing with us today as I'm dealing with a remote location, and I thank Ryan for helping me with that. And oddly enough, one of the other conferences in this hotel is on data collection. And of course, I want to try and crash the session and get my way in there. I haven't figured out exactly who it is that's holding this conference, but their banners outside deal with collecting data, storing data, and that's the world we're going to come into. But then we have to put our students at further risk or give up our privacy rights to the government, those things that were protected to us in our amendments. So we'll be right back after these messages. This is Tamara Scott. We're talking about Datapalooza and the potential for danger to your kids.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
And thank you for staying with us. I am Tamara Scott. We're coming to you live from actually Las Vegas, which sounds so weird to even say, but I'm here with a conference, and as I was just saying, there's another conference on data collection, and most tempting for me to try to crash that conference and see what else I can find. Tanya Ditty is my guest today. Tanya is the State Director for Concerned Women for America, and she comes out of the education field / technology field. And so when we're talking about data collection and some of these things with the Common Core, she has a natural background that has allowed her great understanding into this field. So Tanya, when we're talking about this, and I guess I failed, forgive me, I failed to give out the phone number if someone's out there wanting to join in, 855-244-0077, 855-244-0077. We can patch you into the conversation. And I can't see the chat line either, so I'm probably missing things there as well. But Tanya, we've heard about In Bloom. In Bloom is the, well, I'll let you just kind of take us through In Bloom, if you will.
Well, yeah, this is, In Bloom is a company that has gotten tremendous money from Bill Gates. It's kind of basically they're funding it. And it started and was put in place a couple years ago, and they were piloting it in several states. I have to say there has been some kickback against this. But basically what they want to do is they are it's a technical way where they are going to be the, I believe, like the host for, they're going to provide the technical hosting abilities. It could be cloud computing, whatever, for companies, for data for companies. And here's what companies want to do, and this is how InBloom is involved in it. Companies want to be able to go out. They don't want to go out from school district to school district in each of the states to sell their products. If they are selling a digital learning service that helps kids read better, well, it is a waste of time and energy and money to go into school district by school district within the states to sell their products. And when they sell their products, they just sell it, the kids use it, and, they hope that it increases, for my example, reading scores within the grade levels. So what they want to do is they want to do more of a national initiative to where companies, will sell at a national level, and that school districts then, the school districts will be involved more, at a national level. And so it's a national effort for companies to be able to host their products at a national level. And again, it could be the same company wanting to do, a reading initiative and provide digital services and digital learning, but it's going to be national. And so you might have, let's say, 7 or 8 companies that are going to say, look, we'll go in, we'll work with the data that's given to us by the students, and then we'll produce products that are personalized to that student. And that's a real key thing. In the Common Core initiative, the whole idea is to do personal learning initiatives for kids. Let's not do a classroom of 30 where the kids are learning the same thing every day. Every child needs to have their own personal learning portfolio, and that's where these vendors are coming in. We can go in, harness the data from the student. If they're doing okay in this, then we'll adjust what we're offering, and do personalized learning. And so InBloom is all about being that hosting mechanism for these companies to supply these resources out to states. States would basically come here, come to maybe like an InBloom type setup, to where, again, it's the states coming to them versus the companies going out into the states. And so, again, it's a way to collect data to provide personalized learning for students, but they're harnessing the data. And the vendors they're going to pay to get some of this data. And parents are thinking that their students' data isn't going anywhere. I think that's the big problem with InBloom, is that student data that's supposed to be confidential and private is being sold to vendors, so vendors can make products based upon student data and make money off of it. It's worth your audience going out and reading up on InBloom. Again, there's been a lot of kickback in the states that the idea that student data will be sold to these vendors to make products for them to come back then and help the students out. But it's all about the money. It's all about who can make a bundle of money on this. And believe me, Pearson is one of these companies that want to be able to harness this data so they can make products and then sell it back. So I hope that was clear, again, in just a short amount of time to explain. It's a big fabricated way just to make money and to collect student data.
Well, and it's a whole other side of it, because I had heard the concern of the information being shared, parents not wanting personal information. We know, I think it was in Louisiana, I could be wrong on that, but I think it was Louisiana, where Social Security numbers for the students were uploaded and given to this data sharing, which is certainly something that no one would want. Now, you mentioned the personalized learning. And again, they have wonderful ways of selling it. We've seen the positive spin on the biometric scanning they're doing on the faces as how this is going to help teachers understand if students are actually learning the information. And now you're talking about the personalized learning, and that's why they want this information so they can better guide or detail or plan a curriculum But Tanya, you and I best know the personalized learning is going to happen in the classroom where teachers have the freedom to interact with the student and decide what that student may or may not need. And Common Core destroys that very ability because it will be, in time, a national curriculum because standards will be deemed. And when we teach to the test, we end up teaching what the test is asking. And the standards will be they will be determined not by our local school district. I want to come back. If your state doesn't have in-bloom, we're told that Iowa doesn't have in-bloom. Tanya, does that mean we're off the hook, that Iowa doesn't have to worry about the data sharing, the Datapalooza?
Well, no. In-bloom is just, In-bloom is it's a company. It's a, I don't know, it might be it's a company, but it can be part of it, but it's just, again, another piece that's making money. And they wanted to pilot it in, I believe, 9 different states. New York was one of them that stepped out. Georgia, supposedly, we were a part of the pilot, but we were told that the data was not being given over to vendors. And now they've kind of backtracked a bit. In-bloom's backtracked a bit because there was such kickback, particularly out of the state of New York. And so they're backpedaling a little bit, but again, it's just another way. And again, Microsoft is behind it. They've offered to use their technology, to build these servers that can hold all this data. But again, it's just another piece of the puzzle. It doesn't mean it might play a part with the student, the statewide, data collection piece. But it's not the end all. And so again, to be concerned about.
So again, when parents say, "Well, gosh, we can relax because we don't have in-bloom in this state," or "Our Department of Education says this," or I want people to understand you really can't relax because there's so many different aspects and facets of it that. Honestly, this is going to require more supervision than if you're just to simply homeschool your students, which they would be safer. And we know that the learning is usually, the testing comes out, I think usually an average of 2 test scores or grade levels above the public schools. So you would probably be financially better off and academically better off, and your students would be better protected if you would homeschool your students. And it would take you less time to homeschool than to try and navigate through the system of Common Core, what your legislature knows, what they have passed, what that still means for your local school district. And as we said, the grants that are coming privately to school districts are now making it more difficult to know what's actually happening, even though a state may say they're not participating in Common Core. Tanya, points of action for people out there. We're down to our last couple of minutes. We know New York, Oregon, they've got bills in front of their legislature to protect their students' data. We would suggest that would be a great thing for states to consider. But for what can parents do?
Well, first of all, parents need to be educated on the issue that the federal privacy laws that covered student data, their student data has been gutted. So they need to become engaged in this conversation with their local schools, their legislature, and the State Board of Education and demand that student privacy be kept intact and really put pressure on their governor, their State Board of Education, and again, all the way down that they are not going to tolerate their student data. But I will say that parents also need to be alerted to this My Data Button initiative. What they should begin to look for is as they begin to use digital learning resources from sites, be it again Scholastic, all these Pearson, whatever they're providing, if they're out and their kids are doing online digital tutorials, places where the kids might be taking quizzes and so forth, it's going to be a button that says My Data. It's going to be a blue button that they can click to download their data. When they begin to see that My Data button sitting on resources that schools might have purchased from vendors, that is a federal initiative that the feds are behind it. Again, right now it could be that it's just a way to download the data because students have a right to that data. But when they need to start looking for that on anything that's being done in the schools. In Georgia, we have questioned the chief information officer at the DOE. What vendors is Georgia partnering with, or that are going to be, using the My Data and the My Data button? Parents need to be alert to that, because again, who doesn't trust Scholastic? In the past, Scholastic used to be very good. Now, I will tell you, I don't trust Scholastic at all, because of so those are some things that they just need to be alert to that.
I agree. And in your note on Scholastic, I had concerns way back when my kids were still in the public schools about the books and the choices and the leaning of the Scholastic material that they were seeing. But that's for another show. So we need to wrap up here. Tanya Ditty has been my guest. She's the State Director of Concerned Women for America in Georgia. Tanya, if someone wants to contact you, how may they do it?
Well, they can email me at CWA Georgia, that's the state spelled out, CWA Georgia at Comcast.net. Obviously, they can go to concernedwomen.org and click on the state site for Georgia. All sorts of information about Common Core is out there. My contact information is out there. That's probably the easiest way. Concernedwomen.org. Go to the state of Georgia. There's a drop-down list for states, and my phone number is there. My email is there. We also have StopCommonCore.com. It's a great website that's got tremendous amounts of resources out there, and those are just some good contact information.
StopCommonCore.com, a great place for you to go. And again, most every state has a Facebook page on Stop Common Core. And in Iowa, it is open. There is a closed one as well, but there's an open one where you can just get information and resources, and you don't have to sign in. It's just there for your information. So Tanya Ditty, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your information. Folks, you need to go to Datapalooza. Data, D-A-T-A, Palooza, P-A-L-O-O-Z-A. YouTube. Just Google it and watch some of those videos. At the very most, watch the 24th video with the Chief Information Officer, Todd Park. And I think that will give you some information as well. Tanya Ditty, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Tamara. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Common Core. And folks, we'll be back next week, 10 a.m. We'll be back in studio, which I know makes it a little bit easier for Ryan and all of you to follow along. But thank you for joining us today. Be encouraged and never be complacent.